Hello, everybody. Welcome to Womb Wisdom Podcast. I'm Prajna, and this is a healing-centered podcast where we focus on accessing your body's innate wisdom for healing for all bodies. And today I have as my guest Agata Krajewska.
Hello, Prajna. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me to speak to you.
Yes. So how long ago was that when we met? Was that about 4 or 5 years ago?
Something like that, about four years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Wonderful. So, Agata, how about if we start out, here you are, somebody that is in a female body, and our podcast is called Womb Wisdom, but it isn't just for women because really the womb is more about this cosmic holding, the birthing place of all existence, that the dark womb in which we surrender all identity. So it's not necessarily just for women, this is for all bodies. And as you spoke in our little pre-conversation, you're not a mother and it's not in your plan, but you have a great deal of creativity. And let's just start at the beginning of being born in Poland and, maybe how that has been for you as a woman and what was going on historically at the time. Just a little bit of a background would be great.
Mm. Yeah. It's different to have been born in a Eastern European country. So there's slightly different story behind me, and Poland in particular was a battleground between Eastern and Western Europe, and it was a country of many bloody wars for hundreds of years. So part of the Polish psyche was trauma, and that was very evident in the way people related. And at the same time, there was more freedom, kind of not necessarily social freedoms, but there was more wildness. Everything was a little bit more improvised in Poland.
So what was the year that you came from Poland over to the United Kingdom, and what instigated that move?
I came to United Kingdom in 1997.
1997. Okay.
Yeah, at the age of 20. And I really was running away from what felt like a barren land for me at the time. So I spent my teenage years experimenting with drugs a lot, very unhappy and lost. And by the age of 19, I felt like I was at the end of the road. In fact, I was contemplating suicide at that point. And I actually remember a moment of looking in the mirror, with these tired, drug-worn eyes, and feeling like this is it, I just want to leave. And having this moment of seeing something in my eyes that couldn't die and that was never touched by any of my suffering. And that was actually my first and one of my strongest spiritual awakenings. And then that was that I never touched any substances from that day on. And I just felt I just need to leave. I didn't see any avenues for me in Poland at that time.
Mm.
And I literally was handed down an address in England randomly. That's like a fairy tale. You know, somebody I didn't know just handed me a piece of paper with an address saying, go there.
Mm.
I ended up going to Emerson College, which is a very vibrant, creative Steiner adult education place. And I studied there for several years and really, really got nourished and renewed.
Ah,
Despite of a lot of suffering in Poland, I
yeah.
felt my faith really changed and I was really carried when I came to England.
Mm. That's
Mm.
very interesting. I didn't know that part of your story before. So you looked in the mirror, you were in a period of drug usage, and it
Yeah.
sounds like quite a bit, and you felt you were running away. So there was, even though maybe the trauma wasn't spoken about from what was going on historically in Poland, and there was some freedom and more liberation was happening, but perhaps, and you can correct me on this, it was still in the field, the ancestral trauma, the energy of the trauma, maybe not spoken about and hadn't quite come to a place of healing. So I think in this generation, for so many of us that have that in our ancestry, that there's kind of a period of time where it doesn't get spoken about, it's kind of suppressed, but it's there in the field and you can feel it and sense it all around you. And in the way that I know you, and like most people, you're very sensitive. So I think that the tendency is for us to numb and to put things into our system where we don't need to feel it. And then you had that very powerful experience of looking into your own eyes and noticing something that is untouched and unwounded and not touched by that trauma. And something about that was able to stay with you in a way, kind of carry you forward to England. And you mentioned a Emerson College and Steiner based. So for our listeners who may not understand what that means about a Steiner type of school, would you say a little more about that?
Yes, well, I know that you are familiar with it because I know from your book that your girls had Steiner education. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm a Steiner trained teacher.
mm, there you go. I mean, it was an adult college,
Mm,
so it was, you know, it wasn't exactly like a Steiner school, but yes, it's a philosophy that is very holistic and understands human development as multi-layered, taking care of the soul, taking care of the artistic development, taking care of various bodies, acknowledging energy body, etheric body. So for me, it was a perfect place to land from being kind of undernourished and lost to
mm,
be, you know, surrounded by things that were all natural and very, very wholesome.
mm,
It
mm,
was a perfect nest to kind of recuperate in.
mm. So would you say that in a way became a spiritual practice for you, nourished your soul and gave you some direction?
You know, there was more healing just in a healthy community, actually,
Mm,
and being held by that. Unfortunately, I found that there was a lot of beliefs, you know, connected to uh, to that Steiner education, and there was always a part of me that just wanted to know the truth really from within, and beliefs didn't land. Dogmatic beliefs didn't land very well with me.
mhm,
So it was more the holding of the community and the creativity that was nourishing.
mm. Love,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So how did you continue then with that? And I just want to say I agree with you as well as far as the beliefs that any kind of dogma can in a certain sense start to fixate on less of that interior life of just how can you experience yourself directly and meet who you are from the inside out. Yeah, so I get that. And where did you go from there?
Well, it was not far from there to my first contact with non-dual teachings.
Mm,
My early 20s, I think I was maybe 21 or 22 when I was reading The Power of Now. This is when it came out. And I came across several teachers from Papaji's lineage.
mm,
And at that point, I was using, and I was going to satsang to London. The place where I was not far from London. And at that point, I was using spirituality as an escape route.
mm,
So, you know, there was no more drugs, no more, but I suddenly discovered this space where I could just catapult myself out of all my troubles and be in this kind of nameless space. So, so obviously, it was very valuable to discover true nature. But I was very split, and my ego was using that discovery to make myself feel better about myself.
mm,
You know, it's not that uncommon.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that was the next stage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in a sense, you could say that there was some kind of yeah, this is a tender, sensitive topic right here because I think it's really common that many of us will come into spiritual experience and, to kind of sense out the difference between a spiritual bypass and avoiding life and difficulty and consciously doing that. And then also just like needing some time to feel the sense of nourishment that comes from meeting something that's really deep and profound, but may not necessarily by itself address all of the different human wounding that we bring with us. And so it seems to me that, and sometimes we can get fortified by that, like you said, there's something really beneficial in that. And then there comes a time when we need to meet our humanness, which is what I feel like I'm hearing from you.
Mm. Yeah, thank you, Prajna. That's beautifully clarified. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then how did you come to your work with, well, there's a couple of things you wanted to speak about and maybe we'll get to that in talking about the work it is that you do now with the theater. And I watched a couple of your short videos, and I actually recognized some of the people in there from my own work and traveling over to England. So that was nice. But yeah, say more about that because it seems like one that I was looking at had to do with women really feeling their gifts of healing and bringing their medicine and their voice and their healing gifts forward, and then what kind of gets in the way of that authentic expression, and maybe some of it connected to the true history of women being labeled as witches, that term witches that got placed on healers, midwives, and that there was a long period of hangings, burnings, massacres of women. And is that part of what comes out in your theater? Because I think that's very strong in England and also in Scotland. And as you know, I have seen that in my own work. When we do retreats, we see many, not just women, but men who have had different prior lives, even of being tortured for kind of just not going along with whatever the dogma or the dominant culture was demanding at the time and rebelling against that.
Mm, mm. Yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that. Thank you for that question. Yes, I really discovered it mainly. It arises in the form of the amount of terror that women feel when they are about to speak out, when women are given space to speak their truth. Often the amount of trauma that arises in the body just before being seen, being witnessed, is completely disproportional to the experience, and they often have flashbacks to that sense of being persecuted for speaking their wisdom. And sometimes it's just the wisdom of their heart, and each heart would have their own wisdom. But often it's wisdom that is connected to nature. It's wisdom of wanting to protect the earth, or knowing things intuitively but not rationally. It's the deep wisdom that that is not approved or scientifically verified. And so I find that often these gatherings, so the work that I do is theater based, but it's really around witnessing, individuals being witnessing. So it's solo autobiographical theater. And it happens in small groups. And I work with women, and my partner works with the men. And then once or twice a year, we organize a festival when some people can turn their exploration into more of a crafted show, and then the whole community is invited. So there's many women who just are witnessed and speak in those small groups that are safe. And it's often the healing from the witch hands that is spoken about, and we feel like we are these somehow that we are the descendants of these women who suffered, and that we're giving voices to them, when they had to be silenced, that now they can speak. And there's often grief, and there's celebration, and a healing that happens in those spaces.
And do you find that, because that's part of what I've always been interested in, is for a very long time, I a very long time ago created a theatrical liturgical drama, because I was a minister way back in the day. And I didn't want to do preaching. It just wasn't my thing. And so I petitioned to do liturgical drama. And I had this very strong feeling that if people had an opportunity to speak their story, and in a place that felt safe, like a chapel or a circle, or just a holding space, which I refer to as the womb, a place where you can settle and feel safe and feel seen and felt, because trauma healing is very much about being able to be in a relation, it's that relational field between us, of feeling seen and met. And then the nervous system can receive a piece of information where it can settle then and express itself. So I didn't have the words that I have for it now, but back then I had a hunch. And so when people told their stories and they were able to, and not only be witnessed, but be believed, something really important about that kind of acknowledgement of being heard and seen and felt, and to be joined in the circle. And it sounds like in your theater there's this intimate holding, which is also like a womb. It's the intimacy of being held in safety and softness that that empowers something that's so natural to us to come forward. And often on top of that is, as you said, is grief, tears, pain. Sometimes some deep screams come out. Do you have that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not a cathartic space.
Mm-hmm.
So presence is very important to the work. So we work a lot with resourcing, and we work a lot with awakening this identity of presence before the memory of any difficulty is invited.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really at the center of the work is presence and safety.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of naturally can touch whatever wants to emerge. So in terms of moving energy, I would use different sort of embodiment exercises that are clearly contained if you need to move something. But no, we don't do this kind of just taking the space to scream, it's more, unless the screaming is really fully felt and intimate, that would be a different scream.
Yes. Like if it authentically just moves.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
like a grief, but with that grief comes some pain that is
yeah,
strong.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So
Yes,
yeah,
like the first step is the presence.
yeah,
This
definitely.
presence, so that a person can ground and be able to have some degree of self-regulation, would you say, to learn that skill?
Yeah, completely. And trusting the body. So we often would start with embodying the story, The words are secondary. How would the body tell the story?
Mm,
Or what stories wants to come out through a movement?
mm,
We work a lot with an element of surprise, and that's beautiful, because then that what comes out of a deeper place of being rather than from the mind. um,
mhm,
yeah, it's really lovely when people are surprised and feel like they are being revealed to themselves.
mm, mhm. Yeah. So what would you say are the common themes of the theater, with what kind of stories get brought forward? Are there
Mm.
common themes, or is it pretty different?
No, there is common themes. There are common themes. um, what I'm always touched by is this sense of uniqueness and commonality at the same time, and that everybody's voice needs to be heard for us to feel like we can all breathe out and feel now we are one whole,
Mm,
because each voice is heard. But the themes that come often are um, experiences that were painful. So it could be maybe experience of abuse or trauma, experiences related to relationships, intimate relationships, experiences related to love of nature,
mm,
and you know um, remembering nature. And whenever a challenge or a trauma is shared, we always work with the redemptive quality of the experience. So we always want to uncover the gift
mm,
within the experience,
mm,
and the understanding that these particular trials and tribulations made us the gift givers of our unique gifts. So
mm,
there's always celebration with those performances and those sharings. However much pain is shared, the outcome is always a celebration.
Mm. I love
Mm.
that, that redemptive love that just comes naturally when something gets to open.
Mm.
Yeah, wonderful. So you also mentioned that another thing that is you have some kind of passion for is mending not only the fabric of historical trauma that women carry and how that can be um, held in presence and safety to release itself naturally through theater and then find the redemption in that, the gifts that come forward. And then this mending of this split between men and women, male and female. And that I want to, kind of see how we can fill that out also in relationship to, also for people who are listening to this that don't have a womb, but also bring with them these qualities of creativity and mothering. Because one of my main interests is, and I feel I am a mother and I have special needs children. So, the mothering that needs to come from me, I don't know where it comes from, but it has to come ongoing for a very long time. But I feel that also in my work, but I feel how much all of us, not only need to learn how to cultivate mothering for ourselves, but mothering for each other and mothering for the wholeness of the planet. Like I really feel very much as you spoke of nature, mother calling us back to herself, that attending, that kind of attending isn't necessarily about having a physical body organ that's called a womb, but it's more this uh, fertile space of richness that pain can die into, that we all can surrender into and give birth to possibilities, to new ways of existing together, mending the split between men and women, um, letting the children that are here with us now, letting them have their mothers, and their fathers, that all of us can bring forth this quality of mothering, of nourishing, of fortifying the goodness of life.
Mm. Gosh, they big themes. I'm kind of wondering how to bite into them, from which angle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I felt if if I just speak about my personal experience first, maybe um,
Mm-hmm.
I felt that there was something about the relationship between men and women, and then obviously that reflecting the inner feminine and masculine, um, that was always close to my heart, because my parents uh, were antagonistic to each other. There was a lot of hostility between them, and I know it was the same for their parents. So it went generations back. There was abuse, and there was real war between men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I always felt uh, that when I entered an intimate relationship with a man, that there were bigger forces that wanted to come into it and were asking for healing. And also, there were also more distorted forces that would come from my ancestry that wanted to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a big journey for me. Um, yeah, and it's currently a journey in my intimate relationship with my partner Phil, who also works with me, who does the same work. So that's beautiful. But our relationship is a healing cauldron, and we consciously allow um, stories that are bigger than just personal me and personal him to
Mm-hmm.
come into the relationship and to be felt and to be met. Um,
I
so I
just,
feel that's
yeah.
part of my calling, part of my longing.
Mm.
And often the performances that are,
You
pardon.
I just wanted to say, I just wanted to underline that one piece that you just said, a healing cauldron, like your relationship. It's almost like it's a third thing, so there's, in a sense, there's an individual and an individual, but there's also this third thing that can be nourished, the cauldron, the healing cauldron, where you can come out of your own personal stuff, and then see, though, what is it that we might still be carrying with us that isn't personal, but it's here. And how do we look at this together without, having a strong identity of ownership of it or blame, because when we make it an ownership thing, we're right away there labeling blame on a particular individual. But here, in the way you're saying it, it opens it up. Continue.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Prajna. Thank you for underlying that. So, and then bringing it back to the theatre of awakening work, we often find that the stories are about, women would tell stories about their relationship with men, and men will tell stories about their relationship with women, and they will speak of their pain, and they will speak of their love, and they will find some place of longing for another way of being together, or a place of redemption or forgiveness. In fact, me and Phil have run workshops where his men's groups would meet with our women's groups, and the men will just witness women's stories, and the women witness men's stories, and just in that witnessing, so much healing happened.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's not all about binary gender, and yet there is cultural conditioning of the female and male bodies. But I also like to see it as an inner masculine, feminine, and how they can be opposing and fighting with each other within us. They certainly do within me.
Yeah, and sometimes we can. I spoke with another woman, and she likes to put it in the frame of yin and yang, and then for certain people that identify differently, maybe that's a greater invitation, but really, this feminine masculine energy isn't really about a male or a female body, but it is more of these energies. And at the same time, like you're saying, we have these historical archetypes that kind of follow us, that have come from society and culture, and frames of references that we have been trained to model ourselves. And finding out the dissatisfaction in that for certain people, where it doesn't land, or it doesn't feel like that's authentically who or what I am. And so creating spaces, and it sounds like this in your theater, where you can have a space of presence and just being who you are, and then playing out whatever is in the way. Like, let space be here to play out those different dynamics, so we can see, that's what we do in my work, as you know, in the retreats, to see what dynamics aren't serving. Are we willing to let them go, or let them heal, let redemption take place? As I love the word redemption, to let that take place, if that's what wants to happen. And I see so much in this interior life, as well as the circles that we create. So much of it is about our willingness. Are we willing to embrace our wellness, let our wellness, let our wholeness unfold, and to let the fragmentation either mend or fall away, is it not needed? And it's a process. I've been at this for a very long time, and all the time, like, I love the element of surprise as well, because it's like, whoa, here we are again. This is a new discovery, a new exploration, even right now, in the way that we use language. You know, there is a growth in that, in a way that where we can be sensitive and not duplicate the ways in which culture has trained us to create normative standards for anything, like what is normal or what is normative. I mean, like, these are really interesting questions, and I think it's the generation that the millennials, I think they're called, the millennials in one of my daughters, well, maybe all of my daughters are in that era, and really questioning all of the different things that we call normative. So this masculine, feminine, normative kind of archetype that has been, passed down generation after generation after generation, and many shifts happening in it. And one that I see still kind of in the shadow, and you may notice this in your work, is that we can tend to have an allegiance or a loyalty to the male dominant normative, because the abuse that has happened as a result to women and other people, native people and immigrants, on and on and on, here in the America, there's the Black Lives, is that the punishment has been so horrific that there is this kind of hidden gesture almost to align with the dominant, because out of fear of what would happen to me if I stand up, if I speak up, if I really give voice to who I actually am, which ties into something that you spoke about in the beginning of, like, as women, how we can hesitate in expressing ourselves fully, because there is a little bit of this hidden loyalty to the dominant agenda. And if you step aside from that, what might happen?
Mm.
Do you get what I'm saying? Sometimes we can back away from what we know is right, the rightness of something, and back away because there's still kind of this hidden loyalty in the collective field.
I'm completely with you on that, and I feel this is where a power of myth comes in quite strongly, uh, because that allegiance is to the way how we make sense of things, and how we make sense of things is often through the stories that we've been told. The story of Eve, who was evil and tempted Adam out of the paradise, and so on, and all these stories of of war being such a wonderful thing. And how many myths do we have of about pregnancy and birth giving? uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I feel with the story work, we are one of the series I do is called Making Her Story instead of history. It's really through retelling, how we frame the world,
Mm-hmm.
that we can change the dominant narrative,
Mm-hmm.
the possibly male dominated narrative. And when there is a group of women, I think there is a certain safety created, um, where these suppressed qualities, of wildness, of irrationality, of healing, of um, embodiment, sensuality, where they can be let out of the box more and celebrated. And then when we do it in a safe place, then these women step out of the door and they bring a drop of it wherever they are, and it kind of ripples on. I feel like as women, we have to be the ones who give ourselves permission and see ourselves where we haven't been seen.
Mm. Really good. Yeah. Giving ourselves permission. I love that. And the other part too that I think is really part of this wildness of, unleashing is also the quality of nurturing and care rather than consuming.
Mm,
Like the narrative is so much about consuming and possessing and taking over and what can I get. And I think that naturally to all of us, that we're our interests when we really get down to what's innate about us, our innate goodness and wisdom is about giving. It's what can I contribute? How can I give care? How can I love you more fully? How can I really meet you and see you and listen to you? Because when we're really engaged in life in that way, at least in my experience and people that I work with and see, and even in my own children, in all the years that I've been a mother, I see my children in all, in the schools that I've developed and organized and run, is that people are most enlivened and engaged when they're giving and contributing and having this really heartfelt connection with, like you said, the land or other people. That right away the emotional intelligence increases. I see that. And then the learning, the ability then to learn and take in information happens very naturally. Where when we're following this old narrative of consuming and taking over and dominating, where there aren't even spaces to actually digest what we've already received, to like digest and assimilate. Instead, what's happening is putting over and over and over, like covering over and not coming to that awareness, the presence of what's just actually already here, like our enoughness. And I think that this is what we're finding happening more and more and more in these gatherings that are facilitated more by in the way of a womb, in the way of a holding space of exactly what you're doing in this theater. It's so exciting what you're doing.
oh, thank you, and thank you so much for bringing that part about the gift. And I really, really feel that, and I feel that turning of the tide. If we just turn towards what we love, we naturally blossom and naturally become the gift. And that's also really evident when people are witnessed, that when they are loved and they express their love, they are the gift.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
I want to ask you one more thing about, I know that you're not a mother, but you have these mothering qualities that come into your work, into your life. And do you want to say more about, just like how mothering happens by not having an actual child, giving birth through your own womb,
Mm.
but still feeling that quality of mothering?
Mm. Yes, yeah, I'd love to say something about that. Um, Mothering is really a very innate quality, and that metaphor of us having a seed inside, a seed of love, that then we care for and carry, and then give birth to. That can happen in many ways, and I feel that in my work I become a midwife for for the women to give birth to themselves, really. They discover that seed of the preciousness of their existence, and they tend to it, and then we give birth to it together when they are witnessed and when they are received. It's almost when the baby is born, it comes out and it's caught in the arms of of love, hopefully, ideally. uh, so that um, that sharing the so-called performance would be received by by the group, by the safe safe holding of the group. And I often felt that I've been pregnant with somebody when I worked on a performance with them. And then when they released it, I felt that I've given birth.
Mhm.
And in my younger years, I really wanted to have children, and it just didn't work out that way. And I had a very strong message from Spirit that to heal the split between the split of separation, there is a need for real love of the mother. And I felt that I was given these images of the menstrual blood sinking into the earth, um, to somehow be a kind of healing image, to counter the blood of war that sunk into the earth, the suffering of war. Um, and yeah, and I just really felt this clarity of the mother saying, I need you. I need you to not have children. I need you to be a mother in a different way. So yeah, I get very, very involved and very fulfilled when I can offer my love like that.
Mm.
Mm.
Oh, that's just beautiful. That seed of love that is in all of us, and that importance of giving birth to it in yourself, and how you can midwife that for others and feel like it's you yourself giving birth again.
Mm.
How beautiful. Like that's the kind of that's the strong message that I keep getting over and over again as well, is this need for all of us to mother each other, ourselves, each other, and the Mother Earth herself. Wow, so that's gorgeous. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, you mentioned, and I don't know when this happened, that you had a unnecessary surgery. And just a moment ago, we were speaking about takeover, kind of the dominant culture, because I had an experience of that also in the medical profession, of feeling very much, and then we all have to, we're perceiving through our own lens. But through this lens, my perception was a takeover, and really not being listened to, not having my body honored, and not allowing the midwife to come into the room, so that my children were born by an unnecessary C-section, and then had um, extensive damage because of that. Now, you had mentioned that you had a hospital situation as well. Now, when did that come in, when you were still in Poland, or was that later?
It was in Poland when I was 14.
Hmm. And but what I remember in one of the retreats, and I don't want to say details for you because that's more private, but it was almost like there was an experience of you giving birth to yourself in one of those um, retreats, related to this hospital experience, right? Like it took a long time for you to work through that. Yes, I'm still working through mine.
Yeah, no, it was formative of my whole life because
Hmm.
as a result, I was deeply traumatized and disabled, and then ill a lot. So yeah, it was one of these gifts wrapped up as trauma, um, and it's definitely, yeah, it's formed me. Mm.
Hmm. Hmm. So that was one of, in the healing of that, as you
Mm.
and just like really meeting that in yourself,
Mm.
you were able to find the gift in that.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
um, yeah. I mean, it was. Yeah, as you said, it was a kind of typical patriarchal approach where I had a curvature in my spine that didn't give me any troubles and wasn't visually even hardly percept. You could hardly perceive it. And then I had this operation where I was cut open and put a metal rod inside next to my spine, and then I was put in plaster for 9 months and I couldn't walk. All of that at the age of my budding sexuality. So it was a very strong experience of that sense of, the linear, the metal rod and the plaster, this very, very kind of systemic oppression on my body, on my young body. And it felt like from then on, after I recover from my drug addiction, from then on, it was a long journey to really come back to my body as a safe place. So it was a very strong experience of invasion and a kind of unsafety. And that's why safety has become such a big part of my offering, and trusting the body and wanting to listen to the body. Which I know is, it's very similar with you, from what I've heard. How the hospital experience was kind of, well, you speak about it. I don't need to speak about it.
Yeah, well, I wrote about it in my book, Edge of Grace, if anybody wants to read it, but I am rewriting about it again because, I recently watched, I've been watching many documentaries lately because I'm very interested in historical trauma and really uncovering the impact of dominant culture. That's part of the reason for this podcast and the rewriting that I'm doing and kind of uncovering my own story, because one of the documentaries that I watched was about sexual abuse and within the Catholic Church. And just there is a statute of limitations that has been extended now for different kinds of abuses, specifically sexual abuse, because not in all countries is it the same. Like in this documentary, I found out that Spain has the shortest amount of time. And then in other countries in Europe, it's longer. And I don't know what it is in the United States. But because of what happens when there's a kind of an abuse like trauma, like an invasion or an interruption of something that feels natural gets interrupted, the natural development, like you said, of your budding body at that time. Or for me, it was, my body and my babies naturally knew how to give birth, but that was interfered with. So it was a takeover. So when something happens like that, we go for a period of time. The unconscious will, as a protection, suppress the memories around that and numb the sensations in the body as a way of protecting us. And we go into a survival mode. And it takes a long time for safety to come, like you said, to feel safe in your body. We first have to come to a place of somehow resourcing safety so that the truth of the experience, the memories, can really come to the surface and heal. So for me, the first time around when I wrote that story, I was early in on that process and I hadn't given voice to now more clarity of the memories have unfolded. And I have found documentation of a sonogram of how well my babies were, how there wasn't anything wrong. And then just the proceedings that took place and how all of that relates to the patriarchal narrative, in the sense that my midwife was not able to enter the room. My body wasn't listened to. And so part of what I'm looking at in this rewriting is, why did I feel so disempowered to not say, stop, let me go home? And maybe I did say that, but it's the same thing of we will back away from something to protect, to protect something, and won't give voice. And maybe we've learned too in our psychic that to speak out, then only more harm will come, or whatever, all of these things that that impact us. So I'm looking at all of that now really closely because my daughters are 25 now and they'll require attention and full-time care. They probably won't live independently, be able to have the resource, the independence and skill to do that. So I have to really look closely at how that unfolded, and if it's happened here in this body, that is 25 years ago. Imagine how this kind of systemic takeover, oppression, or um, neglect, or not neglect, but yeah, I guess takeover is the best word. The takeover of the baby and the woman's body, knowing how to give birth naturally when not interfered with. Sometimes, of course, support is needed. Just like how you're speaking about giving birth in a larger way of the seed of life within each of us, our gifts. Like there's a way of cultivating that, and there's also a way of blocking that.
Mm.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of rambled on, but that's something that I'm still digesting, still assimilating, still learning how to articulate in a way that is meaningful and contributes to the larger field of healing collective trauma and the impact of patriarchal dominance in all areas,
Mm.
medical, spiritual, educational,
Mm.
all cultures.
It's the air we breathe, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the elephant in the room.
Mm.
What is the message that you want to give to the listeners, as far as how to honor their bodies, their innate wisdom? Like, what is the most important thing coming from you at this place in your evolution?
Trust your body and trust the gift that you have come here to bring. Really, we are all amazing heroines and heroes. It's what I'm learning in my work is that, I look at a person and when I hear what they've been through, I just want to bow down to them. And that's true about every single human being.
Mm.
And and another thing I would say is there is a huge gift in giving open attention, just the space of listening and being and just allowing somebody else to unfold in that light of open non-judgmental attention. So I want to encourage us to give it to each other.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, so thank you all for tuning in, and thank you so much, Agata, for coming on, and we'll see you again for sure. And those of you who enjoy this program, please share it, like it and subscribe, do all those wonderful things so that we can continue to reach a wider audience. That's so greatly appreciated. And if you go to prajnaohara.com, you'll see there is a menu item called podcast, and you can get more information about the podcast there. So thank you and have a beautiful day.